Hello everyone, hope you're all doing well. Just wanted to quickly jump on today, well maybe not quickly, probably the same as normal, but we're going to be talking about the state of medications in New Zealand when it comes to our aquarium fish. What's important to know, what should you do if you find yourself needing them, basically help. So yeah, without further ado, let's get into it. So to start off with, we're going to give a bit of a kind of a general overview of everything. Hopefully there'll be some good information for those of you who might not be too familiar, and then maybe just go over some of the facts for everyone else. But basically in New Zealand, we're pretty limited in terms of the types of medication we're allowed to get over the counter. And generally a lot of the ones that we have previously been allowed are now restricted. So things like metronidazole or metroplex, or as it's called in the US, and that is now not allowed. You have to get a prescription. Erythromycin is very similar. I'm not going to go through all of them, but pretty much think of a medication. There's a very low chance that we're allowed it. So yeah, basically that's kind of where we're at in New Zealand. And I think it is one of those ones where I think it's probably good. I think it is a good thing that these things are restricted. They are available. It's not like you can't get them at all, because you can. You can get strong antibiotics and that. But if you're wanting to use them, or you think you do need to use them, you would need to speak with a vet and get a prescription. So obviously, there's a lot of people who watch these videos from all over the world. I'm not too familiar with everywhere, so I can only speak as far as New Zealand goes. But in New Zealand, if you need medication for a human, you will have to get what's called a prescription, where you go to a doctor and they tell you, oh yeah, this medication, this dosage, this frequency, whatever. And basically that's the same for any animal, so cats, dogs and fish. So you need to get a prescription to get these fish medications, and there is a lot of people who are unaware that you can get a prescription for a fish. If you go down to any local, the vet around the corner, they might not be able to do it, but you can find places to do it. You might need to look specifically for exotic pet vets, like people who see a lot of, the fancy parrots and lizards and all this kind of thing. But a lot of them will see a fish. When seeing a fish, the vet will need to do a visual inspection usually. They won't be able to just prescribe it just because, they won't be able to take your word basically. So when they're prescribing these medications, they will need to do a visual, an assessment on the fish. They're not going to be able to just take your word for it that this fish has X disease. Because, to be honest, because they're the experts, you might need gill scrapings, or you might need fecal samples, or that kind of thing. So that is something that is possible. You can even, depending on what's wrong with the fish and budget and everything, it is definitely possible to get x-rays and that done. I had one time Penny, our Asian arowana, had a bacterial infection in her liver, and I went through this whole process, and yeah, we got gill scrapings done, fecal samples done, we got, what else did we get, x-rays done, all this kind of thing. So it's definitely doable. It is quite important, because there's no point just throwing medications at a problem if you don't know what the problem is. It is really good to kind of figure out what's going on first, and then being able to go from there in terms of deciding on an appropriate course of action for medicating or that sort of thing. So yeah, you will usually you'll need to take the animal to the vet. People do stress about, oh, this is really stressful, but don't worry about it. It's a stressed out fish regardless, and taking it to the vet is going to be the best option for actually getting it the treatment that it needs. It is equally stressful to take a dog or a cat when they're sick, but we kind of accept that that's what we need to do to be able to actually get them the treatment they need. So the same rule sort of applies for fish, and it isn't something we really talk about very much. But yeah, so that's kind of, I guess, the process. You want to make contact, obviously make an appointment, just check that they will see fish first, and then you'll want to take the actual fish into them. There is some that will do house calls as well, depending on where you live. Oftentimes there's vets that'll come to a house call as well, which is another potential option of something for you to look at and maybe consider about what might be a good option to get the animal the best treatment that it needs, the most appropriate treatment, and not just random throwing stuff at a problem. This is probably a bit of an unpopular take, shall we say, but I definitely think that having these medications as a prescription only thing is actually the right call. I know a lot of people disagree, but I think it is the right call. At the end of the day, we are kind of just hobbyists. None of us are trained to be able to treat diseases or recognize them. We don't obviously have the resources to test samples of, fecal samples or gill scrapings or anything like that. We are kind of just figuring it all out as we go along. A lot of it is kind of strapped together science. And I mean, that's fine. It gets the job done. But when it comes to prescribing like very serious medications that can do damage to livers, can potentially be carcinogenic, cause cancer in the long term, things like that. It's not something that should be played around with lightly. It is something that should be taken a little bit more seriously. And the other thing as well that kind of needs to be considered is the possibility of what we call superbugs or antibiotic resistant illnesses, basically, where exposing things to smaller doses of medications isn't actually enough to kill them, so they just get resistance to the illness, basically. And yeah, then what are you going to do when you need to use this antibiotic, but actually it's not going to do anything, so you're kind of stuck? When it comes to these sort of problems, the best option is discussing it with medical professionals. The same as if your child got sick, you wouldn't just treat them with, whatever random medication you found on the internet. You'd actually get to the bottom of the issue and, get scans done, do this proper medication. And I'm not saying it's lightly. It's obviously expensive and an investment. But if you're wanting to use these more serious, more strong, more grunty medications, I think this is the best way to be able to get there. And having them just being available over the counter and that is probably not the world's most safe idea or the most long-term efficient use of these very strong medications, like very powerful things that can really do some proper damage. So that kind of gives you a bit of an idea of the medications that we're not allowed and why we're not allowed them. But maybe for this next part, I was wanting to talk about what medications can we use and what would be good applications for them. So this one here, the Wonder Tonic, this is the bottle that I use, and I find this is definitely the best option for like ick, epistylis, any sort of external illnesses. This is definitely your best option. This I find is kind of the New Zealand version of the general cure that you see often on like American YouTube and all that. We don't obviously get that. Those medications are restricted, but the Wonder Tonic is a good one to kind of treat most things that might be affecting or ailing your fish. It's cheap, it's easy, and it is really effective for a broad range of bacterial or fungal sort of issues, I guess. It is, again, so it's got, I don't know if we can see it there, but, I've got to keep my hand steady, but it's got methylene blue, malachite green, archiflavin, and quinine, or whatever, but it generally makes it just a good kind of all-round broad spectrum, targets everything kind of medication. We've also got those medications, like, you can get them separated out. You can go buy some methylene blue in that, and methylene blue is good for fungal infections. It's good for the antiseptic, basically, like cleaning out wounds and that, stopping infections. And obviously we use it for shipping. And then we've got obviously things like salt and copper, like copper sulfate, all this kind of thing. And I think what we have available at the moment is good in terms of we have good options around to treat the things that we should be able to treat. If we're needing to treat anything more strongly, you will probably want to be getting a professional opinion on those sorts of things. And I think we do need to, I guess, make it a bit more mainstream to talk about these kind of things with a vet or a medical professional. Because to be honest, the hobby in general isn't the most, like, we're not designed to be able to solve these complex medical issues. These medical issues need, to be able to figure out what sort of internal parasite your fish has got, you will need a fecal sample. You just will. You'll need to do testing on fecal samples. Just throwing anti-parasitic medications at the fish is not going to be the most efficient way. It might get the job done, but it's a very scorched earth kind of, I have no idea, so let's just throw it against the wall and see what sticks. And so actually getting to the bottom of these things is really important. And I think it is something we do need to make a bit more mainstream, make a bit more common, and kind of get into the hobby, if that makes sense. It is, I think, the best way. Because, if we keep misusing medications, like we already talked about it, but using antibiotics as a quarantine method, like quarantining your fish in antibiotics, is absolutely insane. It's a terrible idea. It doesn't make any sense. It is just very harmful in the long term in the macro. So we need to stop doing that, and we need to actually know what's going on instead of just throwing a whole bunch of medications. Because as we discussed, it's rough on the liver. It could potentially cause cancer, and it is going to weaken the fish unnecessarily. So yeah, that's kind of, I guess, what I was wanting to get at, is actually talking to the people who are able to do these tests that obviously 99% of hobbyists don't have a microscope sitting at home, so we're not going to be able to do slides in that. So yeah, this is kind of, I think it's something useful that would make a big difference in the hobby and actually allow people to be a little bit more successful in keeping their aquariums. So yeah, thank you very much for watching. I hope that kind of gives everyone a bit of an overview of where we're at and what it might mean and how to maybe navigate this field. I think it is a very complicated one where you ask 100 different fish keepers, you're going to get 100 different opinions and solutions and methods and results and everything. So kind of applying broad strokes might not be the best method. But yeah, thank you guys very much for watching. I really appreciate it. I just wanted to say if you haven't already, please make sure you like and subscribe and, shout it from the rooftops about this channel, because obviously it helps me grow and I would love more people in the Aquarium Project fam. So yeah, thank you guys very much for watching, and I love you all very much, and I'll catch you in the next one. Bye!